Okay, thanks everybody. Welcome to tonight's online information session for the proposed development at 460 Conklin Avenue. Just a reminder that this session is going to be recorded and we are ready to get started. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that tonight's meeting is taking place on the traditional territories of the Silk Okanagan Nation. And we extend our appreciation to the Silk Okanagan people for the opportunity to hold this meeting here today. My name is Andrea Rendell, and I'm the Communications and Engagement Specialist with the City of Penticton. Joining me tonight are Jordan Hallam, Planner 2, and Audrey Tangay, Planning and Licensing Manager with the City. The purpose of tonight's information session is to ensure you're aware of and understand the proposal and to provide you with opportunities to learn more and ask questions, and so we can include your feedback for the applicant, staff, and council. So how will it work? I'd like to remind you that I am recording this session. This is to accurately capture the feedback we receive in our discussion portion. Audrey's going to start by providing some background about the city's official community plan, and Jordan will provide a presentation of what is being proposed. After that, we'll have a question and answer period. So we'll ask you to please put any questions into our Q&A function. And if you can keep your questions as concise as you can so we can try and get to everybody tonight, that would be great. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Audrey.
Thank you, Andrea. So today we're here to discuss an application that the planning department has received. Before diving into the details of the proposal, I wanted to quickly touch base on the OCP, often referred to as the city's official community plan, since the application is proposing to make an amendment to the official community plan. In essence, the OCP provides goals and policies to guide decisions on planning and land use within Penticton. The OCP was created to guide the evolution of the city to the year of 2045. The plan established goals and policies for a broad range of interconnected areas to create a vision for sustainable growth in our community. It considers factors such as population growth, the existing types of housing we have, also our housing needs, looking towards the future. The OCP includes a future land use plan, which helps to direct growth in the city for years to come. Each colors on the map have a land use type and project the future housing forms. Every property in the city has what we call future land use designation, which identifies what we envision on that property in the future. Important to note that this is not always what's existing on the property today. For example, a property could be located in the core area, in the downtown area, have an older single-family dwelling, but the actual future land use designation or map shows that the future for that property would look at what we call mixed-use development. The OCP may have the future land use designation for the property as something with more density, could also be less density. This document helps to direct land use decisions and is a tool used across BC municipalities to help direct development and growth. Now, some of you have been involved maybe in the recent engagement the city conducted to guide and understand the housing needs for Penticton. Residents were encouraged to learn more about the need for housing in our community and the work of the task force, recognizing that the work may lead to significant change in all Penticton's neighborhood. Just have a couple of slides that I wanted to share. So in the summer, the city conducted a housing needs assessment to provide a snapshot of the current housing situation today in Penticton, looking at some of the past trends and makes estimates about future housing change to inform future planning efforts. Housing in Penticton is predominantly single detached house. It's about 43%. Slowly over time, this number is decreasing. This trend is going to continue into the future due to the limited options for new single detached neighborhood development, the increased preference for more urban living closer to downtown, increased housing costs, also the needs for our aging population. The next largest segment is low-rise apartment up to 6 stories, followed by other multi-housing types such as townhouse, high-rise apartments, and duplexes. The greatest future demand for housing in years to come in Penticton will be for duplexes and infill development like row houses, townhouses. with over 1,500 new units projected by 2046. There will be a need for all types of housing across the housing spectrum, from single detached housing to apartment as well. Transitioning back to the OCP, the time horizon for this OCP is 25 to 30 years. This is how far forward our population projections and land capacity and analyze look, and the basis for direction and the goals and policies and the future land use plan. Recognizing that there's some changes, world change quickly. The intention, however, is to comprehensively update the OCP every 5 to 10 years to take into account new trends, some of the changes, influences, integrate new learning and opportunity. So respecting the vision and value in this OCP, but also providing for innovation and adaptation as new opportunity arise. Proposal to amend land use designation by landowners may be considered with the following consideration that are here on the slide. So first, alignment with the vision and the goals as a broad level for the OCP, provisions of evident social, economic, and environmental benefit to the community, assessment of costs and other implications for infrastructure, parks, road, utilities, water, sanitary, and storm sewer, public facility, suitability to the context, form and character, and design. All proposed amendments will be accompanied by meaningful public engagement, which this is why we are here today, in addition to the required notification and the formal public hearing. So this is highlighted here is, one of the component of what we're looking at as public engagement, so reaching out to the residents. So now I'll pass it over to Jordan to give you more details on the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. The purpose of tonight's engagement session is to discuss the land use change. The application we received is to amend the OCP from detached residential to ground-oriented residential. Subject property is located along Conklin Avenue between Moose Jaw Street and Argyle Street. The property is close to amenities and different uses such as Okanagan College, the car dealerships along Duncan Avenue West. There is transit stop almost directly in front of the property, and transit runs along Conklin Ave. The property is also in close proximity to the Channel Parkway. The applicant is proposing to redevelop the property to allow for multi-family townhouse development. The proposed development includes 2 fourplexes, each 3 stories in height, for a total of 8 residential units. In order to proceed with the proposed development, the applicant requires an official community plan amendment to change the future land use designation from detached residential to ground-oriented residential. Several planning applications are required for this proposed development, as summarized on the table. Today's session is to discuss the OCP future land use change. The OCP designation on the property is detached residential. As shown on the map, the property is adjacent to other detached residential in the neighborhood. The proposal is to change the land use designation to ground-oriented residential. The detached residential designation supports lower density areas of single detached houses and/or duplexes in primarily residential neighborhoods, including single detached bare land stratas. The applicants are seeking to change the land use designation to ground-oriented residential. This designation supports medium-density residential areas with multifamily developments, where each unit has an exterior door and the construction is primarily wood frame. The proposed development includes 2 fourplexes, each 3 stories in height, for a total of 8 residential units. Now I will show a few slides with some plans and renderings of the proposed development. This slide shows the site plan and some key pieces of information to consider. Vehicle access is provided from the lane on the west side of the property. There's 1 parking space per residential unit and 2 visitor stalls, which is the requirement of the zoning bylaw. The 2 visitor stalls are located at the rear of along the south lane. Each unit has 1 electric vehicle outlet, which is a requirement of the zoning bylaw. And outdoor amenity space such as grass, trees, and shrubs are provided at ground level for each unit. This slide shows a proposed landscape plan. As you can see, there's landscaping around the property, including on the boulevard with 3 boulevard trees, and at the back of every unit for amenity space for residents. Here's another image of the development, which helps to show what the subject property will look like from the west lane. This slide shows the process and next steps that occurs after the engagement period. The engagement period is currently underway and we are collecting feedback from the public. This does not indicate that the city is going to either support or deny the proposed development, as we would like to hear back from the community before proceeding. Once the engagement period ends, community feedback is shared with the applicant for an opportunity to adjust or make changes to their proposal based on the feedback received. Then the proposal is presented to council and the public along with the engagement results. Any changes made by the applicant as a result of the feedback would also be shared at this time. Once the results are shared, the next steps is to bring the formal OCP and zoning amendment bylaws to council, followed by public hearing. The public hearing allows the public to speak to council directly, voicing their opinion on the development. After this, further consideration of the bylaws may occur. The important pieces we want to be clear about is that the applicant may make changes to the plans after the engagement closes to reflect comments received through the engagement. Should council decide to move forward and consider the bylaw amendments, a public hearing will be scheduled. This is the public's opportunity to speak directly to council about the complete proposal. We encourage you to watch for the public hearing notice, which will be in local newspapers, and notice letters will also be sent to residents within 100 meters of the property. Additionally, there will be notices on the city's Facebook page and included under key dates on the project page on shapeyourcitypenticton.ca once it has been set. Community engagement is required when amendments to official community plans are proposed. In this case, the applicant is proposing to amend the future land use designation, and this is the reason why we are here. The engagement results will be shared with City Council, the applicant, and the community after the engagement period. Staff are following the procedure for community engagement for OCP amendments. It involves many steps to raise awareness and give the public opportunity to learn about the proposal and provide their feedback. Shape Your City Penticton is the main hub of information for the project. That's where you can fill out a feedback form to share your views. Notice signs have been posted on the property and letters were mailed to nearby residents within 100 meters. News releases and newspaper ads will also help raise community awareness about this proposal.
Here we go. So that's the proposal, and now we're looking to hear from you. If you'd like to ask a question and address the group, you can start using the Q&A function now. And just a reminder to try and keep questions concise. And I see that Lori's gotten us started. So she just mentioned that developers want to maximize investment returns, but developments have to fit into a community even if we need densification. So she's wondering how this proposal fits into the older community, just in particular due to its size.
Yeah, so just at this time, we're just taking public feedback regarding the OCP change to the future land use designation. So at this time, we're just looking at if the community wants to see this change in a specific area of the city.
Okay. And no other questions coming through yet, but I have one that does come up quite often when we see these kinds of plans. We're just curious how parking is going to be addressed in this area. So if you can speak to what's being proposed, and then how would off-street parking be managed as well?
Yeah, great question. So the applicant has provided the required number of parking spaces with garages on each unit. Additionally, there's 2 visitor parking spaces at the rear of the property. And this is a zoning bylaw requirement, which they meet in this instance.
Great, thanks. And the next question is about the rendering of the plants and the trees. So I guess how accurate are those drawings, would you say? They seem to be quite impractical is what this person is inquiring.
Yeah, just at this time, it's just a rendering showing the proposed development. Obviously, as we move forward through to the development permit, it will be more involved of showing the locations of all the trees and shrubs and landscaping.
Great. And I guess what I'm seeing in the Q&A is concern for, again, for the size. It's really, it would set a precedent in the community. So they're just wondering how can that be considered in the community that's full of, regular residential homes, older homes that aren't quite so big.
And jump in on this one. Thanks for the question. I can also kind of talk about the first question as well. And again, it is a large lot, and like we've mentioned, it is mainly single family and duplex zone, for sure. It is a big change to go from 2 units to 8, and again, that's sort of why we are coming in today, just asking whether or not the actual townhouse fit. And maybe it's not so much about the number of units, it's just more going from a single family type and duplex to ground oriented, which again we see townhouses, could be other forms of development, but keeping that sort of that medium density rather than single family.
Okay, thanks. The next question is about the width of the lane. It seems quite narrow. Is there a reason behind that?
Yeah, I measured the lanes and they're about 6 meters wide. I'm not sure exactly what the engineer.
Which is our typical size.
Yeah.
Okay, great. There's a question wondering if the city can maybe restrict what's being built there. So for example, could instead of what's being proposed, could they go down to a 4-plex only? Is that an option?
Yeah, definitely it is an option to limit the density. We can limit the number of units. There is through the OCP, we can do it through the zoning as well. So there's definitely the chance to do that and cap it at a certain number of units.
Excellent. And I guess kind of in a follow-up to that, the RM2 floor area coverage, they're looking for a 59% increase. That seems to be pretty significant. And the question is, why is that being considered?
Yeah, so under their application, the applicant has applied for a variance to increase the lot coverage from 40% to 53.6%, just due to the size of the buildings. But again, this only covers approximately 50% of the lot in buildings.
And then a follow-up is, what are the setbacks to the lane? How can you mitigate people parking in their driveways? Or can you make them bigger so they'll fit cars?
So the RM2 setbacks, so from the front yard is 3 meters, that would be to Conklin Ave. The interior side yard setback to the neighboring property to the east is 3 meters. The applicant has applied for a variance to reduce the setback on the west from 3 meters to 2.16. And the rear yard setback is 6 meters, which allows the visitor parking at the rear.
Thanks. And I'm seeing quite a few comments just noting that there's really inadequate parking and not enough green space for what the community would like to see. They're just wondering, how can this get addressed?
Yeah, definitely. By filling out the feedback forms, this is the chance to voice. It's the public chance to voice their opinion about the proposal. So, and what we see now from the public is what we'll bring forward and look through the engagement results, and then it could be something that the developer changes in the future.
Okay. And then just to kind of follow up on that, Lori's just kind of wondering how a community can say no to a development like this one. And Jordan kind of touched on that a bit already, is like this is the opportunity to share your feedback. All of this is going to get shared with the applicant, staff, and will go to council as well. It is definitely a part of everything that council has to consider when applications like this come forward. And yeah, they will make a decision either to carry this further or not. And should they decide to carry it to the next stage, then you have another opportunity at the public hearing to voice your concerns again. So those are the opportunities. And like we said, we are recording this and we are making sure that all of the feedback forms will be available. The results of all the feedback forms will be available on Shape Your City. That'll be coming up, going to the council meeting in December, so you can watch for that. And just popping into some questions here. Yes, there's a lot of concern that changing this OCP designation will open the door for greater developments like this. I think the question here is how do we keep it from going above and beyond in these neighborhoods? This would set a precedent, and maybe it's not what the community wants to see. So just looking for ways to not have that happen in this community.
Yeah, I think it's a fair comment, definitely fair statement, just, over time in a lot of the application of the changes that we do, we get the comments. And again, this is why we're doing the format, this engagement, just to collect some of the feedback and be able to share with council, because at the end of the day, all this information gets shared with council, and then they can make a decision how they want us to proceed. But I think it's a fair comments, and we appreciate the comment as well, as we get that comment a lot.
And I think also, based on what I'm seeing in this Q&A, I think perhaps not they're not opposed to having change in the neighborhood. A lot of folks have mentioned that they're, maybe a duplex, maybe a secondary suite. We have one person in the Q&A saying maybe, 4 to 6 units with space for parking and green space. Why does it have to be so big, or is there an opportunity to downsize the scale?
Yeah, there's definitely an opportunity, and I think, once the engagement, so we're running this engagement until November 19. The expectation is, based on that, we share that information with the applicant, with the developer. I saw that there is a question in the chat too, asking whether or not the developer was here. I think, again, this engagement is city-led engagement, so we want to hear, we have a policy in place. We want the city to hear your comments so we can share with the developer, also share with council. So again, there's definitely an opportunity for a change to the proposal that we have, and based on the feedback that we received.
Thanks, Audrey. There's a question about the height, and are there any height specific restrictions, or what are the rules around height, if there are any?
Yeah, so the current R1 zoning, which is on the lot currently, allows up to 10.5 meters in height. So if someone were to build a house there, they could go 10.5 meters. The proposal is to go to the RM2 zone, which would allow 12 meters in height, and the maximum 12 meters in height. The current plans show 10.3 meters, so it is under the zoning bylaw height requirement.
Thanks. There's a question, at what point does staff make a recommendation to council? And so just to kind of explain the process is, once our engagement closes, feedback forms are being collected until November 19th. Then we'll analyze those results, and we're going to present those to council. They'll be available on Shape Your City. At that point, staff we'll make a recommendation to council for their consideration on whether they'd like to move forward. And then again, if they do decide to move forward, then it would go through bylaw readings, public hearing, and follow that process, or they may decide that that's not something that they want to pursue. So that's just kind of the process. We're in the engagement part now. So if you haven't done so already, I'll just give it a plug, shapeyourcitypenticton.ca. You can do your feedback forms there. We also have paper forms at the library. Another question, where is the nearest property with the same zoning as proposed changes? I'm not sure, do we have any more like that?
Yep, there's one just 2 blocks away on Duncan Avenue, and there's also one on the corner of Hastings Ave and Argyle Street that's zoned RM2 already.
Okay. There's a question from David. He's referencing specific guidelines, and I'm sorry, David, I'm not familiar with them guidelines. 5.22. Perhaps maybe you could just add a follow-up explaining what you're looking for there. That would be really helpful. And just looking. Okay. So there's a comment looking for, they're talking about using lots where, for example, a house has burnt down. Is there an opportunity to take advantage of homes that are in those kinds of, or lots that are in those situations versus, I guess in this case, the residential unit is still livable?
Just trying to look at the question as well. I'm not sure I can answer. Not really totally sure I understand the question. So maybe we can have a follow-up question.
Okay. I can see Lori has her hand raised in the chat, so I'm just going to set her up so that she can ask her question. Just one moment here. Okay, Lori, I think you can unmute yourself now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, you sound wonderful.
Great, thank you. So this is really interesting and kind of upsetting for a lot of people, I think. And that's why there's so much response right now. But it's only a few people who even know about be knowledgeable. So my concern really is that point that I mentioned. If this gets, the OCP gets changed, this property, and then that sort of opens it up for every property. So it becomes like a, you know, it could become a feeding frenzy. The lots there are very large. And I know a friend who has a property, and there was a variance that was refused, and the person built down very, very deeply to put in almost like another house underneath the house, and then built a huge house on top, and there's a large coach house in the back with another garage. So it's taking up the whole huge lot, but it's not 8 homes. It's like a couple of homes, or maybe a home and a coach house and an in suite, on whatever you call it. So if this OCP gets changed, every developer will be trying to maximize their profits. And there are always going to be these kinds of challenges from the community that we are afraid we will lose because of the anxiety around housing. And these houses, even 8 of them at 3-bedroom townhouse, whatever, will not be affordable to people living here. So then why would we consider this densification improving the housing situation here? It isn't. But when we change the OCP without limits, there's going to be a lot more confrontation, I believe, in the future as developers start to really chomp at the bit. It's my concern, and I would just like that to be noted, that people are worried about this, and that we can be densifying downtown by building up another few floors on commercial building to provide housing and create community, rather than be impacting a long established community like this. Thank you.
I really appreciate your feedback, Laurie. Yeah, it is a big change, and as I mentioned earlier, there is the ability to add or put, you know, a density within, you know, so if there is a proposal or a change in the land use, it doesn't specifically need to be a certain, you know, 8 units could be less, to accommodate really some of the fit into the area, the neighborhood, that could, you know, help or assist. So I really appreciate your comment. I think just to clarify again a little bit the process. I think there's always, you know, there's always a confusion too. So we had a slide earlier. So what we're doing again, like today, is just collecting. We're doing an in-person. And I would also encourage, if you have more questions, to come in person to talk to us next week on Monday. Once we have the feedback form. I also see there is a note talking about whether or not you could share your comments with the planners. And there's definitely that ability. Jordan, who's on this call, is the file manager. And, you know, if, you know, I see there's a comment, the feedback form was not long enough. So there's this ability to send him an email so he can put the comments, and we can put his email address in the chat there. So in case you have additional question or any information. But again, so once we collect the feedback, then we'll share the feedback with council, with the developer, with the community. And that will be an opportunity for, you know, the applicant to revise, you know, possibly not move forward or go forward. You know, there's the ability, like, you know, again, we will share those feedback, and then there'll be another process, which if we're moving forward, then we go to council and there'll be an official public hearing. Again, just collecting, you know, feedback, your opportunity to come to council and voice your opinion. Hope that clarifies a little bit the process here.
Yes, great. And David Norman also is looking to clarify his earlier question, I believe, about the guidelines. So I'm just going to get him set up here, I think. Hi, David. I think you should be able to address the group now.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to speak. You know, I honestly can't believe this went through city planning staff so easy. There's so many red flags. It also went through council so quick, with one question asked about this project and a unanimous decision to go to this next step that we're in. There's no research done on it. There's no allotment of time to it. It really comes down to 3 things for me. Should the OCP be changed from R1 to RM2? We can talk about that. If the zoning is to be changed, what variances will happen, because they've asked for a ton of variances. And what are the guidelines and gut feeling of the proposal from the city planners, mayor, and council on why this is even good for the neighborhood? I'm not going to go into all those. I've sent you all my questions. Some have been answered, a lot haven't. Jordan has been great in getting back on time, but a lot of the questions just haven't been answered. So I was asked to explain the guidelines. So again, there's rules through OCP, and the zoning. There's variances. Those are all rules, but there's also guidelines and common sense. In your own guidelines, 5.2.2 states general guidelines say that in a contextual design, feel better because it fits. Can anyone look at that building with 8 units, 6 units, or 4 units and say it fits in this neighborhood? No, they can't. Again, word by word. In light of Penticton's complex and unique landscape, views, and urban patterns, it's important that designs reflect this character. This is clearly not the case with this proposal. 5.22 G2, again, word for word. Application shall include a comprehensive site plan considering adjacent context for building and landscape architectural design and neighborhood character analysis to demonstrate that the development is sensitive to and integrated within its context and surrounding uses and neighbors. All site landscape plans should incorporate the boulevard. No way is that happening with this proposal. It's completely against the boulevard and completely against 5.22 G2. Last one, 5.22 G4. Views through to the mountains and lakes shall be carefully considered and incorporated into the design of the new development. This new development is basically blocking all the open air views for multiple homeowners up and down Conklin, in the laneways, on Moose Jaw, across Moose Jaw in Conklin. It is so grossly recognizable that these three guidelines, plus all the variances that they're asking for, and it was said earlier that 40%, they want to go to 53.6. That's correct. That's 13.6 difference increase. But from the 40% that it is on our zoning laws, that's a 35% increase. The floor area coverage they're asking for is a 59% increase. Those are both absolutely egregious and shouldn't be allowed. I would like to get questions answered. I've sent you emails today. I would like to hear back on those and why the city and why council would even consider those. No to little green space, few shrubs. It's just too much, way over the top, lots of red flags, and you should have seen this coming. Thank you very much for the time to speak.
Great. Thank you for those comments. We have Joanne on the line here. She's got some comments she'd like to add.
Yeah, thanks so much for those comments, David. And I know we've talked a lot about process, and I think what is important to realize is that what was taken to council was a preliminary proposal, and what they said was go ahead, take it to the community. They weren't giving it any kind of consideration. And when we take it out to the community, the opportunity there is to hear this type of feedback, and for the developer to have an opportunity to make adjustments to their proposal based on what they hear, if they choose, and then it's within their right to then ask for the proposal to be given proper consideration by council. It's not staff's decision on whether or not a proposal can go forward. It's their job to facilitate it. So as Andrea and Audrey and Jordan have mentioned, the feedback that we're taking tonight will be shared with the developer. They can then take a look at it. They can hear, hey, the people don't think there's enough parking. They think it's too dense. They don't think it has the right fit. And they can choose to make adjustments, or they can choose to put it forward for council to consider. And then it's up to staff will take the application forward if that's what the applicant wants. And they will make their own recommendation based on analysis of the OCP and what have you. So what's actually interesting is what we have is an especially lengthy process by having all this front end engagement rather than just taking it to council and then going to public hearing and then making a decision. This really gives the developer an opportunity to address the concerns of the community, which would otherwise kind of derail an application. So if they choose to want to make some adjustments based on what they heard, then that's something that we would see if they choose to take their application forward. So I hope that kind of helps clarify why the city is sharing this with you, even though you see what you perceive as some glaring challenges with it. But this is what this early stage kind of functions to achieve.
Thanks, Joanne. Okay, and I just want folks to know that there are a lot of comments in the Q&A, which is great. I'm kind of summarizing them as we talk about them, but I am taking notes of everything that's being put into the Q&A as well. So even if it's just not in the form of a question, it is getting noted. Okay, so there's a question. It's a bit long. I'm going to do my best. How is the city and the province going to create more housing if everyone has the attitude of not in my backyard? If you look at Tennis Avenue, I'm sure the people who live there didn't want those units, but now they just blend in. Saying these are not affordable is an assumption. Much of what is being said tonight is conjecture, not based on fact. Emotions seem to rule. So thank you for that. I think that's a good comment. Another perspective. Moving here. We're looking forward to hearing more about the developer's vision. Penticton is in dire need of housing. We as a community have to start moving in this direction. If we don't start now, the province will do it for us. Okay. Just looking through to see if there are more questions. I'm not sure if our folks are familiar with the Tennis Avenue. I guess is the question, how dense is the infill on Tennis Avenue? Would Audrey or Jordan have an answer to that one, just for
I can answer that
yeah,
question.
just for relevance for everyone else?
Yeah, no, so I think they're referencing a project that we brought forward to council a year or two ago. We went through that similar process. The property was actually, the land use on that property was industrial. It was changed to multifamily, actually a higher density than what's being proposed here. So more looking at some apartment buildings. So they got their zoning as well, which is what we call RM3. So it is a bit different than what we're talking about here, but there is future, development coming on this property. So they've gone through the same process, OCP rezoning. Now they're at the stage where they're going to be coming in for a development permit to allow development to proceed.
Great, thanks. Okay. Through lots of comments here. Lori's made another note that there are other areas that are more suitable to densification. Many models that are looking for that we can look to for healthy, safe, welcoming growth. So thank you, Lori, for that comment. Just looking through here. Oh, here's a question that I missed earlier. Sorry, it's from Jared. Just wondering if the developer will have to invest in any lane upgrades that might come as a result of this.
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, they will have to provide lane upgrades, as well as obviously bringing in electrical and all the different things required for development engineering as part of this proposal if it moves ahead.
Great. And another one, how many housing units are currently under construction or have been improved? And I'm, Charlie, I'm gonna guess that you mean across the city on that one. If you mean to just let me know if I've got that down. Yeah, so Charlie's wondering how many units are currently under construction or have been approved. And I think we did.
Did you have a board on this, Sandra? I thought you did. I'm looking for it.
Yes, I can. Yes, the exact numbers I don't know off the top of my head. We did have this board at the OCP focus on housing and the Penticton is growing. Kind of talked on that one. It's not in here, but we'll get that answer for you, Charlie. We have it. We just don't have it on the top of our heads. I guess another question that's kind of coming out through the Q&A is, are there neighborhoods already designated specifically for infill identified within the city?
I can answer that question. So maybe, I don't know if you can go back, Andrea, to one of the slides just to help. The future land use plan that I had might show.
Oops. You're looking for this one?
Yeah, so there's different there. You've got your single family, which is your kind of lighter yellow. You've got your infill, if this is what you're talking about. We do have a lot of infill around schools, around sort of that Westminster area, the downtown. So you've got your core downtown, and then you've got, as you move from your Main Street and your Martin Street, then it starts going into sort of lower density as you move from apartments to townhouses, and then that infill as well. So there's different types. You've got your really straight single family, you've got your infill that allows up to 4 units, and then you've got your ground oriented, which is what the proposal is for, which can allow more, that the townhouse type than just, let's say, a fourplex. So yeah, that's the question.
That's great. Thanks, Audrey. Another follow-up question is, so with this proposal, plus what is on the books for Timmins, there's going to be a lot of traffic impacts in the neighborhood. And so the question is, what's the city looking to do about improving safety along Duncan Avenue, Timmins, Moose Jaw, and Fairview to mitigate this?
I can answer that. So through the recent change in the land use change on Timmins, the developer had to participate in some of the changes or sort of traffic impact along Moose Jaw. There was nothing about Duncan, but we did collect some money to potentially to make some changes, which are supposed to occur in the next year or two. But at this point, for this particular property or the number of units, we have not looked at the traffic impact for 8 units. We did look for Timmins. We did went through a traffic impact assessment, made some recommendation, and then the city is kind of moving forward with some of the recommendation from the traffic impact assessment.
Thanks. And then the next question is wondering, is the developer going to be allowing Airbnb in their suites?
Yeah, I can answer. So the RM2 zone does allow vacation rentals as a permitted use. So it is possible to Airbnb them.
And I have a follow-up on that one because the province is going to be changing regulations soon. So will that impact the ability to have Airbnb suites there?
There's a big possibility that would impact. Like right now, we've received some information from the province. The city is still putting together for council to make decisions on how we want to proceed. But right now, what we know, I mean, if there may be some changes in the spring, so they may not be allowed to do Airbnb.
I think that is one question we get quite often about Airbnbs and the concern that they are impeding on long-term rental markets. So it'll hopefully those changes will help address some of those concerns. And just kind of going through what we have in our Q&A here. So some more comments, just that this proposal does feel very cramped. It's kind of going end to end. So we're just hoping that we can have that recorded for folks, that the space is quite large and that's not what the community wants to see. So I do have that documented, folks. Thanks very much. Will there be space for a walkway in front of the development along the laneway, or will the residents have to walk in the laneway? This could be dangerous. Do you know what the plans are for that, Jordan?
Yeah, so there'll be the city sidewalk along Conklin Avenue. But there is no lane, or sorry, there's no sidewalk down the lane per se. It's just will be used as a lane.
Okay. So David is noting that he's looking at the measurements on the garages, just saying that they are quite small. So is there a plan for if cars can protrude into the laneway, will that kind of be regulated? And he's concerned about garbage pickup as well and vehicles passing in the laneway. So is there an opportunity to kind of work on addressing that?
Yeah, so if there's cars protruding into the lane and they are say a hazard, obviously a bylaw call would be best. And then for garbage will be picked up from the lane just like it is in most places in the city.
Right. And another question is the proposed development going to be apartments for rent or townhouses for sale? So I guess is there going to be purpose-built rentals included in this plan, or is it all for sale housing?
At this time, I'm not sure which way the developer is going to go. They haven't indicated if they're going to stratify and sell off the units. However, they can change that in the future. And again, we're just looking at the OCP change right now.
And I just wanted to add to this, and because the question mentioned apartment, so the land use designation that they are asking for is what we call ground oriented. And the ground oriented is really specifically for townhouses. So just to kind of clarify that, again, that's just more the intent than rather than having an apartment.
All right, that's a good point. Thank you. And just to circle back about the planned and proposed developments and what is in the city books, Joanne's tracked the numbers down for us and she's popped them in the chat for anyone who's curious. We need 9,200 units by 2046. We have 6,750 planned, which leaves 2,450 to fill the gap. So hopefully that answers that question for you. Seems like a great place for a development based on the proximity to the college and not too far from the hospital. Do we know what the price per unit might be?
No, we wouldn't know at this point.
Yeah, little early there, but that's okay. Lori's saying that the issue link is a little hard to read, so we can direct the PDF should be available on the Shape Your City as well, Lori. So let us know if you have any trouble finding it there. And David's brought his question back. Sorry, I missed it earlier, David. Besides density, what else does this project bring to the neighborhood? So I think he's looking for, Audrey had mentioned some key parts when landowners bring OCP amendments forward for consideration. And I think he's just looking to understand what this proposal, how this proposal fits into those.
I can answer that question. Yeah, so you're talking about density. I think sort of just like stepping back, you know, we're looking at housing. I think that's the big thing here is, you know, we're council priority is really related to housing and provide more housing. Joanne shared some of the numbers here, looking at what we need over time. So really, just to answer your question, and again, it is more, you know, the need for housing for the community.
Yes, and a follow-up comment in the Q&A is that it also brings diversity. So thank you for that. Yes, okay, so I think we have answered all of the questions that are currently in the Q&A, but if you have more, we still have some time if you're looking to ask some more questions. Yes, okay, so we're circling back to the Airbnb concerns. Without restrictions from the developer, this could turn into an Airbnb. The concerns are noise pollution, loud parties. Sometimes these units are unregulated. So in the small window between what could be between the development being finished and when the province changes their rules on Airbnb regulations, how can we address potential Airbnb concerns in this unit?
Yeah, I think that's fair question for comments that we get all the time. You know, we have some, you know, we have a pretty robust program for short-term rental in Penticton right now, where you have to go through an application. You know, we do enforcement. So I mean, that would be sort of that piece. If those units were allowed, there was, you know, permitted by vacation rental, they would have to go through the process of getting a city license, and this is how we monitor noise and, you know, number of calls, kind of work with the applicant through that. And I'm aware there's always units that don't see it are being licensed, but that's our typical process right now. We've got the program, we have specific people that would do the enforcement, do the licensing, make sure that those units are safe. Now, again, the city is really kind of like looking at bringing, you know, just getting some direction for council to see what they want to do with vacation rental right now based on what the province has brought forward, you know, the last couple of weeks. But we haven't really, you know, brought forward any changes to the bylaw, but it could potentially means that some of these zones that currently allow for vacation rental would not be allowed to have vacation rental. But can't really say anything for now until further notice.
Yeah, it is kind of a holding pattern until we know more details of the province's plan. But okay, thanks very much. If anyone else has questions that they haven't had answered yet tonight, feel free to throw them in the chat. If you'd like to, if you're more comfortable addressing the group, we can unmute you too if that's your preference. So question, would you stop someone from building a house because they might rent it out or make it an Airbnb? That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question because at the same time we won't know what they do. You know, we see a building, you know, if you come in, you apply for your building permit, we won't know whether or not you're renting it or, you know, what potentially. Often there's a change of ownership as well, so it might just be an owner and somebody else purchased the property and then decides to rent. So it's hard for us to know when we have these building permit that coming in to know exactly what is the intent. Usually we'll know if they stratify. So through the building permit process, we would know whether or not it is going to become the rental or be stratified, and then just to have ownership. That's when we would be advised of how they want to proceed with it. But at this point, we wouldn't be able to stop them if they were going to rent it.
And is there this would be a strata unit, you suspect?
At this point, we're, you know, it's too early at this point to know. We usually know down the road.
Yep, that's great. Okay, another question from David. He's looking at the end of the building on Conklin. Looks to be about 5 or 6 feet from the sidewalk. Would this be enough, and would this not look awful from the street? So I think he's concerned that the proximity might be too abrupt. Is there? I guess that would be a variance or something that the developer might have to apply for that kind of distance.
Right now, with the proposed plans, they meet the 3-meter setback, and there's no variance required for the front yard setback.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Okay. Looking through, Yeah, as I mentioned, if you want to raise your hand and address the group, we can answer your questions that way. I'm not seeing any hands raised at the moment, but feel free to throw any more questions in the chat.
It is cool. I mean, again, like, thanks for your comment, David. Like, we appreciate, we understand this is a big change. So I appreciate that 3 meters is very close. Typically in this area, the buildings are set back further. So not saying, it is close. Ideally it'd be 4.5 meter, 6 meter, 3. 3 is our typical, again, RM2 zoning, but again, I think that's it's a good feedback, and this is what we want to hear. I think it's just kind of like, we can turn it around and say 3 meters is too close. We're hoping that they can set back the building a bit further. Again, those are, good comments as well. Even though they don't require variance, maybe the 3 meters doesn't fit this neighborhood. So appreciate that comment.
Yeah, and I've definitely made notes of all the comments we've had tonight. So really appreciate all the discussion that's come out of it.
And I would really like to encourage, like, it's hard over Zoom, like, to ask questions or just get all the answer that you might want. So we do have, again, that session on Monday in person. So we will have very similar board, but we can kind of stand at the board, and if you have specific question, then we will be happy. We will have a number of planners there, so happy to come. And if you're unable to attend that session, again, we're happy to set up a meeting as well to just go over some of the comments as well. So Jordan has put his email in here. I can probably add mine as well. So again, just that opportunity is there if we have until November 19. So if that day doesn't work, happy to schedule a meeting.
Yeah, and just to tag on to that, the Monday evening drop-in open house is going to be at the Penticton Trade-in Convention Center between 5 and 7 p.m. Next Monday, November 6th. So that's the Monday evening that we are referencing. Great question in the Q&A. Just curious how the developer receives the consolidated community feedback from staff, and is it a formal document? And yes, it is. We work very hard on our engagement result reports, and they're always available on Shape Your City if you want to reference what we've put out before. We package it together and it's all shared with the developer.
Yeah, and just to pick up on that, so we do provide it to the developer in advance, and then it is released publicly as part of the council agenda should the developer wish to have the proposal proceed. So they get a first shot at it and have a chance to adjust their proposal, and then it is shared in its entirety publicly. And as Andrea mentioned, you can go back on any of our OCP amendment files and look at the detailed reports there that are provided to council.
Okay, and question from Samantha. Thanks for throwing that in. So she's saying, from what I understand, there are several areas in town that are planned for infill. This area isn't. Why is this proposal even being allowed to get this far when there are other areas to build? And
I can answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Samantha, for that question. So definitely, good point. There's, as we talked about earlier in the land use plan, there's a lot of areas that have already some additional density. And I think Joanne touched base a little bit on that and why we've gone that far. And again, there is a process, and they have the ability, you can make an application. So the developer has to make an application that we need to consider, and we're going through the process. Now council have allowed us to continue with the process, and this is kind of where we're going. But again, I can appreciate that there's a lot of comments, and this is why we're providing, but we will do a big report for the developer and council. But yeah, really appreciate the feedback. And I can answer David's question.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, like I wish I could give you the gut feeling or you know, or thoughts. Again, the planning department at this point doesn't have a position on this application. In a way, that's why we're going to the engagement. Once we have the engagement result, then we kind of look at the broad OCP, the guidelines, the policy, like what is the vision with this, and then we build our recommendation, look at council priorities, housing. So we have to kind of manage a few areas and try to balance it with what the community wants, you know, what council's direction, and also how does it fit in with our current OCP. So I wish I can give you yes or no, but at this point, yeah, we're still balancing all information.
And I think a lot of those key points kind of flow into the next question, which is what would happen in order for this application to be rejected?
So in order to be, so what typically happen is we bring it to council. Council has the final decision on the application. So we, as staff, as the planning department, we bring recommendation forward to council. So so they decide whether or not it proceeds or it doesn't proceed. So if hypothetically we have, you know, we're presenting this to council, they decide whether or not we want to move forward. So that would be how, it's not the city staff, it's actually council. It's a council decision.
And they'll have to consider a number of factors, including public feedback, but they also have to consider things like the housing need. And so, yeah, I think, so we held 7 open houses talking about the future of housing in the community, and we definitely heard a lot of these similar themes. And it's really going to be an adjustment for residents to adapt to the density in some areas that we're going to need in order to meet the housing needs in the community. So part of the goals through these sessions is understanding, well, what can we do to help add this density in a way that fits for the neighborhood, which kind of comes back to Lori's question at the start of the night.
And I can jump into answer Joy's question there. So yes, we do make a recommendation to council. Sometimes we provide more than one recommendation as well. But at this point, you know, what our first recommendation was for council was to move into engagement, so to proceed with the engagement. And the next step for staff will be to make a recommendation if the applicant wants to proceed. There's always, you know, the question is based on the feedback, they might not want to proceed forward. If they wanted to proceed, then we make a recommendation to council whether or not to support or not support the land use change, and council makes the decision.
Thank you. So the next one, I think the main question seems to be related to parking with significant changes in the zoning, additional variances. Are there additional controls on how many parking spaces are provided? I think the concern is that often families have at least 2 cars. So how can we kind of work to address that?
I can answer that question. I think we get that question with most of our application. Parking comes, you know, this is our requirement is the 1 per unit, actually everywhere except in a single family area where if you have a house you need 2 stall. But in terms of anything more than that, it's our practice as being 1 unit, and then, so, you know, 1 visitor per 4 units. That's been the practice, and that's kind of like the way that we've wanted to move forward. We also have in the zoning by section where if they're not providing all the parking in certain zone, you can provide cash in lieu as well for parking. But yeah, just to go and then that's sort of the requirement. So, but I appreciate the comments because we do get it a lot, and you know, the on-street parking, you know, parking is for everybody on the street. So it's something that comes up at all the meetings that we have. So appreciate your comment.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. As I said, I have been taking notes during this, capturing your comments from the Q&A. We don't have any questions currently, but we still have a little bit of time if you have some more. Or you can throw your hand up and we can unmute your mic for you if you'd like to address the group. Just another follow-up, street parking. With 4 spaces on the street for parking, are there bylaws to address illegal parking?
To answer your question, yes, I mean, we do have good neighbor bylaw, we have other bylaws, so the bio department, you know, we get a call. But in terms of illegal, I'm kind of curious, you know, maybe you can kind of further provide a bit more detail what you mean by illegal. I mean, there's on-street parking, you know, if you mean in front of somebody's driveway, yes, I mean, again, there's the bylaw team that would go and attend the site, but I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, maybe just a little further clarification on the illegal aspect. The next question is, our housing starts down this year.
You mean if we're getting less units, or just
Housing permits, applications, along those lines?
I should have all that out and then. You're saying if we have, well, definitely I don't have the number comparable, but I do know, you know, compared to the previous year and then the other year, that definitely the number of building permits have gone down, number of single, and significantly for the number of single family dwelling units compared to we used to have, you know, there's only a few this year. So just to, yes, if that answers your question, definitely going down in terms of planning. Similarly, where we're seeing definitely a shift, you know, going from the previous years.
And I see David has raised his hand, so I will give him the opportunity to speak. Let's see. There you go, David. I think you can talk now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the parking because it's interesting because I asked the city for some comparables on this unit. They sent me 8 and none of them were like this unit, 0. Okay. 3 or 4 of them were on the other side of Main Street on Government, couple downtown and 1 or 2 over by the golf course on the far side of the golf course. So they weren't anywhere near this area or weren't any shape or form like that. But the one that was the closest, 305 Hastings, was interesting because when I got there on a Wednesday morning, there was cars parked protruding onto the sidewalk. There was one car parked halfway on the sidewalk. Half the car was on the sidewalk. And then when I went to the lane, and you can look this on Google Maps, you'll see on Google Maps cars protruding into the laneway. So to say that, you know, bylaws will fix it once it's built and all that is totally unrealistic. And the parking will be a disaster. The parking spaces that they have with a garage for each unit or 2 garages for some, we all know garages become, you know, storage units for sure. So where are these people going to park? They can't park in their driveway, if you want to call it a driveway, at 2.4 or 2.5 meters long. You wouldn't even fit a Mini Cooper on that. Never mind a truck or an SUV or a van. So they're all going to park on the street. There's going to be 12. If you just cut it in half at 1.5 cars per unit, there's going to be 12 to 16 cars. That's just those cars, then visitors, then people coming to see them, then services dropping stuff off. Parking alone is going to be an absolute disaster. And the funny thing to me is it's the least important thing we should be talking about, and it's going to be a disaster. Tip to tip, housing, laneway, the walkways, the driveways, garages, tip to tip, north, south, and east, west on that lot. That is what it is, and that's a reality. We have to speak about that. So we can talk about parking, how bad it's going to be for all the people on Conklin within 50 to 100 meters there. If one person has a party for 10 other people, there's going to be 10 other cars there. So I saw it on 305 Hastings. That was at Wednesday mid-morning. I can't imagine what it's like at night, but that's what it's going to look like there. On a street where there's buses, where people are getting off the buses, where people are walking. And again, for me, parking is almost the least important, and it's crazy how bad it's going to be. So we can talk about how many cars people have and they're going to park. And reality is parking is going to be a disaster. And reality is it's the least on my list anyway of the things that are going to happen if this project goes ahead. Thank you very much for letting me speak again.
Yeah,
I'm going to jump in there too, Andrea,
Sure.
and thanks for that, David. And you know, those are fair comments, and again, things that we've heard consistently, and not necessarily solving the issues you raised, but on the other side of the coin, parking is also a big driver behind affordability challenges. And I'm not sure if Audrey or Jordan has the numbers handy, but there's, I don't know if it's $30,000 or $45,000 is the value of like one on-site parking spot. And when you have these requirements for all this parking, it also reduces the amount of density that you can add. So being more flexible on those parking requirements is important to adding the density that we need, and hopefully getting closer to the affordability that we're going to be looking to achieve as well. Audrey, I don't know if you have anything to add there, if you remember the numbers.
No, what I wanted to add too, and again, thanks for that comment. I think one of the comments that we can take back is that, you know, they should, you know, if they have space, that they should have a drive, you know, appropriately a big drive that they could fit a vehicle in front of the garage door. And again, it comes again, unfortunately the bylaw doesn't specify that they have to do that, but something that we can kind of add to the list, which again, like I agree with you, David, you can't fit the car in front, but you know, the expectation is that it's supposed to be in the garage, but we don't really control what people do with their garage. But point taken, taking some notes on that, David, and thanks for your comments.
Yep, absolutely. And see, there's a few comments in the Q&A that kind of align with that. Parking, garages. So just so everybody knows, I have made those notes, and thank you for those. I think there was one other comment. Yes, Rachel, sorry, I noted your comment about potentially contentious relationships. So just so you know, that has been noted. I just want to be aware of the time. I think unless there's a bunch of new questions, I think we can probably look at wrapping up in the next couple of minutes. I do want to say that our open house, again, just so everybody knows, is going to be happening on Monday, November 6th at the Penticton Trading Convention Center from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. We'll have lots of planning staff available. We'll have copies of the plans you can look at. So come on out if you still have more questions after this meeting. Otherwise, Audrey and Jordan have both provided their emails in the chat, and all of the information is available on shapeyourcitypenticton.ca. And we've got feedback forms available as well, and they're open until November 19th. Just any more questions I can address, I think. one question about whether the fire department has been involved, just to make sure that they can access the laneway safely. So I'm not sure if that's something, if the developer has touched on at all.
Yeah, definitely. So the fire department, building department, development, and engineering have all been involved since the beginning of this proposal, and have provided comments. Fire department won't go down a lane, so that would make the back building would have to be sprinklered as a result of that, as they will only stay on the street. Hopefully that answers the question.
Great. And then a follow-up to that is just about, is there a plan to address snow removal if cars are going to be out on the roads?
Yeah, good question. Again, I think it would fall back into a bylaw. Services would be involved at that point if the lane can't be plowed or if there's snow issues.
I can jump into this,
Yeah.
Jordan. So again, just in terms of, I mean, the city, there's not that many lines that the city actually covers and do the snow removal. There's some particular one, but again, this is not something that, we look at. It's just sort of based on, they will at times, but it's a bit different than on the street.
Yeah, and isn't it fair to say, so this proposal is to support or provide more context and information to support the OCP amendment, and that the next step will be the development permit, and that's where the designs and all that will be finalized. And isn't it also fair to say, Audrey, that is there not a cross-functional staff meeting that brings together engineering and they review these plans to look for issues that are being brought up here? So things around snow removal, garbage collection, emergency response.
Exactly, and I think Jordan kind of touched base on it, but every application we get comments from all department, electrical, fire, building, and as this is but because it's an official community plan, it's not as technical, we don't go as much detail as when it comes into zoning, dwelling permit. We have the application, but what we're considering today is just more, again, the land use piece, but in the back burner, we do look at all the details. And then those details will be presented to council as well if we bring forward, the recommendation to council.
Great. And then I think the last question of the evening, do you think that developers are afraid to invest in Penticton? And if so, why?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, very philosophical. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, this applicant is, a developer that has done other project in Penticton, so this is not the first, not his first go. So, in a way, it's hard to say whether they're not afraid. I would imagine that they've done a few development, including Sandero Canyon, townhouse development down around Riverside. So not sure. Yeah, it's not afraid, but we see development still occurring, but we are seeing slower. We are slower than we were the year previously before, and it's not just it's a little bit of everything. Market construction costs. I mean that's the big one.
Great. Thank you. Okay, just being mindful of time, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I've given it a few plugs already, but one last one for the road, shapeyourcitypenticton.ca. For your feedback forms, we're collecting them until November 19th, and our open house, November 6th, that's next Monday, 5 to 7 p.m. at the Penticton Trade-In Convention Center. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. We hope you have a lovely evening, and we'll see you again soon.